So nearby, Brad, Nisha, and Lucas, the whole crew is here. Are you ready to talk about the Queen?
Yeah.
So, for reference, I wrote the script for this video in 2018.
And nothing has changed since.
And a lot has changed. We no longer have a queen, but I think it'd be funnier if we just talk about it as if she is. Yeah, because when I wrote it, she was like 90 odd. I went, oh, she's not going to die anytime soon. And it was 5 years later, so half a decade. So I think it was alright. But let's just talk about the queen as if she's still alive, because it's funnier that way, right? I think it's funny. Do you not think it's funnier? So, even if you know absolutely nothing about the British monarchy, you probably know at least one thing about the Queen. That being that she's dead, I suppose, right now.
No, commit to the bit.
But of all the things that you don't know, the one thing that you do know is that she rolls around in public wearing a hat worth more than 15 Rolls Royces. And with that in mind, it might surprise you to learn that the Queen, or at least a representative of the Queen, once asked the British government for a handout. And I can already hear the anti-monarchist in Lucas like, it's always after a handout. So we need to explain some stuff here. But what is your understanding of how the monarchy works? Or I guess a better word would be how it doesn't work. Because technically Britain is a constitutional monarchy, which means we have a queen or a king, but the government still runs everything poorly.
But the Queen has some right of refusal on some laws, right?
Yes, technically every law in the UK has to have the right of royal assent, which means the Queen just says, okay, yeah, you can make that a law, and the Prime Minister still has to meet with the Queen once a week, mostly out of formality, and the Queen has never exercised her power to do things like dissolve Parliament, although she probably should have done at least a few times. Especially when we went through our fourth Prime Minister in a row that wasn't voted in. Remember that? Yeah. Our fourth Prime Minister we didn't vote for.
She was thinking about getting rid of Liz Truss, but she couldn't do it in time.
No one could. Never forget that we had Liz Truss as a Prime Minister and she didn't outlast a fucking lettuce. This is a true story, folks at home. Liz Truss was the Prime Minister for less time than it took a lettuce to wilt. Think about that. A lettuce, the thing that's in your fridge that's brown when you get it back from the shop. And it wasn't even in a fridge, they just put a lettuce on a shelf and put some googly eyes on it and live streamed it, and it lasted longer than our Prime Minister did.
Do you reckon they've done that with every Prime Minister and this is the only time it's worked out?
Thing is, it was so fucking... I remember she's got a book out that was by the time it came out, she'd already quit politics. It was so bad. Oh, it did lead to some amazing chat lines of hey girl, call me Liz Truss because I'll give you a weak pound. There's a few misconceptions about the Queen and the royal family. For a start, she doesn't technically own most of the things that people assume that the Queen owns. For example, the crown jewels do not belong to the crown. They belong to the British public. Well, technically they belong to us. Neither does Buckingham Palace. That doesn't belong to the Queen. That belongs to the public. It's held in the Royal Trust, and as a result, the British public pays for its upkeep. I can see Lucas I can see him seething.
I'm just trying to be quiet.
The same can be said for the majority of historical artefacts owned as part of the Royal Collection. They also do not belong to the monarch, and they are, again, and the upkeep and storage of them is paid for by British public money. And this all goes back to a decision made by King George III, who willfully gifted most of his possessions to the British government, primarily so that the storage and upkeep costs would be paid for by the taxpayer and not him. So it's just a massive tax write-off, essentially. Keep in mind as well that the crown still doesn't own all this stuff, but no one can go and just touch the crown jewels. Yeah. That's the thing. Yes, Brad?
I feel like I'm in a
You've got your hand up. What's up?
Because if people can't see, but the three of us are lined up away from Karl. It's like being in a school with our teacher.
Yes,
Mr. Smallwood, Mr. Smallwood, does the crown own swans?
No, the Queen doesn't own all. So there's another misconception. The Queen owns all the swans. It's that swans are a protected animal, so they're seen as being under the protection of the crown. Same as sturgeons, where they're not owned by the Queen, but the crown gets first dibs if a sturgeon is found in British waters. So
include Nicola.
But it's that thing because caviar is a really posh people food. It's the crown gets first dibs, so technically you're supposed to give the first dibs, and it's not as well. So people wondering, wait, swans are protected by the Queen, specifically it's mute swans within the grounds of Buckingham Palace. You're not allowed to kill one of the swans on the palace grounds, but that has been bastardised over the years to suggest that all swans are under the protection of the crown, and they're not. You can go up to one in the park and slap it to death if you want, but good luck with that. Like, try it.
The swan will slap you to death first.
The one I'd always heard was that the only people that were allowed to eat swan in the UK were, like, the monarchy.
No. Heston Blumenthal and Gordon Ramsay would have a go at that. It's like, the thing is though, a swan would be such a weird bird. Can you imagine trying to get that out of your oven with long neck? Just like, I'm imagining it's like a big meaty lollipop when you pull out the neck out of your oven.
I'm not an expert on cooking poultry, but I'd assume you'd take the head off.
But what's the point in eating a swan if you're not going to have the neck? Surely the neck's the most delicious part.
I think, like, the rest is enough. That would exchange it for a turkey at Christmas. You'd have a swan instead.
I feel like a swan would be really gamey though, because they live on like pond water, and I don't look at like.
I mean,
sort of
ducks all right.
You know, are they raised in like areas where there's not like sewage in the water?
just lakes of poison.
Well, it's more though, do you know when you like go to like a park nowadays, and it's like, oh, there's probably sewage in that. Remember that last year where it's like, oh, we've. They raised everyone's water bill and then simultaneously lowered the safety systems for how much sewage can be in British public waterways, and just companies dumped 50 tons of sewage in the water. So we had poo water, and the government's like, that's fine. Just swim in the poo water.
I was going to say, like, I remember you just messaging, like, yeah, most of Sheffield had to, like, be given bottles of water because it's just filled with shit.
Oh, I remember that, yeah, like my building, where the water in Sheffield was so bad for a little bit that one day I woke up and my shower didn't work, and I looked outside and there was 15 pallets of fresh water, and a notice slid through my door of like, do not drink the water, it's not safe.
Did you have to use the bottle of water for a shower as well?
I did, yes. And I remember I went on the internet to find out what the fuck was going on. There was some politician shooting his mouth off like, well, it's a complete misconception that there's places in the UK where we don't have safe drinking water. It's just propaganda. And I'm like, mate, I can't drink my water because it's not safe. Your government told me I can't drink it. Anyway, before you start feeling sorry for the Queen or any member of the royal family, she does have a lot of assets. These include several, literally, palatial estates, countless works of art considered to be priceless in nature, dozens of acres of land, and enough jewellery to drown like 14 Mr. T cosplayers.
That's why there's a picture of Mr. T.
We're sat over here, we could just see Mr. T in the article, like, why?
He is the new Queen now.
But muddying the waters of how much money the Queen has is a curious quirk of British law that states that the Queen's finances are wholly private and she is completely immune to things like freedom of information requests. So the actual true extent of her wealth is unclear, and estimates vary from a couple of million to $500 million. And it's annoying that I have to say dollars, but that's what it got worked out in, and we have a majority American audience.
I'm getting so mad, and I'm just like, oh no, isn't that so convenient for them?
It also is another fun fact. You cannot be arrested in the presence of the monarch. No, like, she could order you to be arrested, but nobody can be arrested in the monarch's presence, and the monarch themselves cannot be arrested. And it's, again, a quirk of British law, as when you are tried of a crime, it is the Crown against so-and-so. But the Crown can't prosecute the Crown. Also, she could just pardon herself.
Just thinking like you're just committing crimes while the Queen's watching you. She watching? Yeah, just...
Oh, it'd be great, like Ocean's 11, just get the Queen involved, and then you steal something, they're like, take him to jail, and she's like, no, you cannot.
I remember I wrote an article about it a few years ago, just detailing all the powers that the Queen has. And just... Legally,
super stressful.
Legally, there is nothing she cannot do. Legally, she is completely and wholly above the law in the UK, and when she's abroad, she has complete and utter diplomatic immunity to any perceivable crime. She also is in charge of all of the military, because every member of the military in every branch swears an oath of fealty to the Crown, not to the country. So she's like the final say on like nuclear launches. So if there was going to be a nuclear launch, like they'd have to contact the Queen to make sure it's okay. And she could launch a nuclear strike without any prior authorization. She can order any branch of the military to do anything that she wants. Nobody can be arrested in her presence, and she can dissolve Parliament to make any rules that she wants.
It's a good job she's lying in a box then, isn't it?
Yeah.
I literally, when you said like she can just launch a nuke, whatever she wants, I've got the image of like her literally sitting there turning the keys.
Was she-
pressing the button,
she
like,
could?
Yeah.
Using her superpowers to stretch her arms out to turn both keys at once.
And with all this power, it emerged that she couldn't even pay her own fucking heating bill.
That's what happens when your house is like 20 acres big.
So this story takes place in 2010 when someone uncovered some documents that were filed in 2004 that the palace had requested additional funds from the government for help with heating Buck Palace, which remember is owned by the public. And this isn't in itself that unusual because, as mentioned, Buckingham Palace is technically owned by the state, even though no one's allowed to live there. Which is annoying, right? It's like, oh, all the parks are paid for by the government. You can walk around the park. You can't go into Buckingham Palace.
So we can't even throw like a massive house party.
No.
Oh,
Can
Raja.
you imagine?
That's what we
Let's
should
get fucking Palace. Let's go.
Buckingham Palace.
That should be the agreement. Is like no one's allowed in it apart from like every member of society who pays taxes gets like a credit for one Buckingham Palace party.
Yeah, it should be like, I think you should book it in. You've got to book it in when you're like one.
Yeah.
Because obviously it's going to take years to do. So the British government pays the Crown something known as, and I have it here, the Royal Grant, which is used to pay the maintenance on things like Buckingham Palace and other royal residences. And in return, the government is entitled to all of the earnings granted by the Crown's holdings that earns on them, which is actually pretty beneficial for the government because they turn over millions per year, which is why you have that argument of it's really difficult to argue getting with the monarchy because they do bring in a lot of money, but the money they bring in is like land that they own, that they lease back to the government and then don't ask for any tax on.
The French make a really good like.
What, cut their heads off?
Yeah, that, but also just the fact that they still make a lot of money from like letting people go around their palaces. They
Yep.
don't have any royals like skeeving off the country, do they?
I
So-
still like that thing when you look at France. It's like we're going to raise the retirement age by 1 year, and the entire country riots for us like a month straight.
I respect it so much.
And then you got our country. I was speaking to my dad the other day, and my dad's like, "I turn 60 next year." I went, "Oh, does that mean you're near retirement?" And he just laughed. I went, "Son, I work for the government. I'm not going to retire till I'm 72." I'm like, "What?" What are you gonna do? So this makes sense, right? Like technically, the government owns Buckingham Palace, so we should pay for some of the upkeep for it because it does generate income. Like you can argue one way or another about how right that is, but okay, sure, I guess it makes sense. But they didn't request the money from like a government grant or ask for advance for money from this scheme. They requested it from the Department for Culture, Media and Sport, specifically a new fund that had been recently established to help schools, hospitals and families living in low-income accommodation with help with paying their energy bills.
Technically, are they low income because like the government takes all the money?
Then there's also like a similar case where, do you remember there was a few years ago where it was like old people keep dying in their homes because they can't afford to heat them? This is a real story that happens every year. And like my mum's on the front lines of it because she worked in like elder and palliative care for several years, and they would have meetings every winter. I'm like, okay, so we're going to see a downturn in clientele this year, which she soon learned was code for people just die. Old people just refuse to turn their heating on because they can't afford it and die in their homes. And that's like really bad for morale, right? It's really bad to have that headline every year. So the government had a scheme of, well, if you're old, like over a certain age, you can just apply for a blanket, just exemption from certain fees, and we'll send you a stipend to help you pay your bills. And they made this as broad-reaching as possible so that, as many old people as possible could apply for it. And it turns out that one of the Queen's accountants applied for it. Yeah, because obviously she doesn't do her own accounts, but someone working for the Queen did that because obviously it was open to anyone over a certain age. So they actually applied for that £250 heating rebate for Buckingham Palace.
Money, please! Money, please.
Ben, give her some money. It's easier.
Is the money not issued by her? Is that not a huge thing of the government? Of if any money is issued out by the government, it's issued by her, so she can't issue money to herself.
Shut up. And here's the thing as well. I remember when that emerged, the Queen did pay that money back. She didn't know. But this other thing that was this money never went through. And it never went through because some hero at the Department for, to say again, Culture, Media and Sport, was really confused about why the palace was asking for this, and they had to send a letter back explaining to an actual human that a palace is different from a hospital. In this letter, they also very helpfully pointed out that it might not reflect well upon the Queen if it ever emerged publicly that money appropriated for, low-income people and people on the lowest rungs of society who need our help was being given to the Queen. The palace representative never responded.
Do you reckon the Queen was signing on as well? Just going to the job seekers.
Well, here's a fun story about the Queen. Of when she travels, she doesn't need to have a passport because a passport is just a letter from.
Just a £5 note.
No, she doesn't need a passport. It's a letter from the monarch to say that you can travel.
You're allowed to travel without outside the borders of my realm. But as the monarch, they don't need one. And this apparently caused a bunch of issues when she travels to countries where they're not aware of this. Have you got a passport? And it's no. So, who are you? It's the Queen. And the funny part is, that when they're giving you the business at international airports, when they'd ask the Queen what her job was, she just replied Queen. It's just, I'm the Queen. It's oh yeah, I guess that makes sense. And that reminds me a little bit of a story that happened a few years ago of when in Egypt they were going to send a pharaoh to a museum to put on display. And they thought, it was a bit distasteful that the guy who used to run this country, we can't just send him as fucking luggage, can we? That's a bit bad, right? So they issued the pharaoh a passport with a photo of the mummy's face. And it's Ramses II, occupation pharaoh, other notes, deceased. As if the passport photo of a fucking mummy didn't get that across.
He's looking at it and be like, wow, this person's had a rough life.
Age 480,000 years old. But yeah, that's the time the Queen applied for a handout from the British government. So let's just talk about royalty for a moment. Lucas?
I think I just need to leave.
Well, that's the thing. The Queen was the only thing really I don't consider myself to be a royalist or one of those flag shagger. But I always had a soft spot for the Queen. Because it's this adorable old lady, she wanted around a big hat. And then she died. I'm okay, we're done. We can get rid of the monarchy now. Yeah, spoilers. So I thought, you know what? We can get rid of the monarchy now. They keep trying to push King Charles. I'm it's not happening. You're not getting King Charles over. It's no one likes him. He's a prick. He looks stupid in that fucking hat. He acts like a knobhead. He's is it his brother or his son's a nonce? It's his brother, right?
Probably both.
It's his brother's a nonce. And you got Prince Andrew just hiding in his palace. I'm not coming out. Not coming out.
I mean, is that how he gets away with it? He just stands by King Charles and is you can't arrest me.
Yeah, you can't arrest me in front of my brother. And it's just it's not great. And I don't want to get rid of our money because I don't want to see fucking Charles's face on a £5 note.
Oh god! Oh, I didn't think about that.
So he's his stupid fucking face on our money. I don't want it.
I don't do cash anymore, so I haven't thought about it.
Yeah, I was going to say the whole UK is probably going to be cashless at some point, so that won't happen.
Because that's one of the things I've got. I have quite a rare item. So I have a blue passport. Yeah, it's blue.
I have one of those as well.
It doesn't even look blue. That's what got me when I got mine. It looks black.
But I got this issued after the Queen died. But this is how you can tell they didn't know she was that sick, because they must have had a lot of leftover stock, because the opening paragraph of my passport says, Her Britannic Majesty's Secretary of State requests, in the name of Her Majesty, all those whom it may concern to allow the bearer to pass freely with let or hindrance and afford the bearer such assistance and protections as may be necessary. It was issued after she died, so I've got a blue passport, technically issued after the Queen died, that still says Her Majesty in it, because they probably had 5 million of the bloody things.
Yeah, because I only got mine last year, so I guess while editing this, I'll have to check mine and see.
Double check, see if yours says His Majesty, because they had to very quickly reprint a bunch of ones, but I think I just was there's some left, just send in one of the left. It was I'm just imagining 1,500 boxes of these, fuck's sake.
Doesn't feel as special now.
Yeah, so we already lost enough money trying to change to these blue passports.
Which are made in France. Don't forget they're made in France. They're made in France by a French company because they underbid the British company.
Yeah.
That we're all in on Brexit and hey, we're gonna print the passports. Well, actually, we can get them cheaper made in France.
You can't make it up.
Get fucked. It's like the guy who runs Weatherspoons, isn't it? He was all in on Brexit for ages, and then all the beer tariffs went up. I was the fuck's this about?
What do you mean import costs went up?
It's like James Dyson, that knobhead, where he was all in on Brexit as well. Then he moved all his companies abroad because it was cheaper.
Yeah.
And he was complaining about paying import tax and tariffs on stuff bringing from the EU. It's like, you voted for this, you dickhead!
Didn't the guy who owned Weatherspoons as well didn't pay his staff?
He didn't pay his staff. Annoyingly, I got dragged into a Weatherspoons just after the pandemic, and they had like their own internal Weatherspoons magazine. It's like, oh, undoing the lies that were told about Weatherspoons. And it's like, the one that got me is, like, it's Tim Martin, right? Who cares? Like,
I don't care.
some knobhead. And it says, like, this is what the papers reported that he said. It's like, if my staff don't want to work, they can get another job. Here's what he actually said. And it's like, that exact sentence with 3 extra words in it. The same sentiment, but it's like, it's not quoted exactly. And then the thing is like, as you can see, the papers can't be trusted to report accurately. It's like, they still reported the spirit of what he meant. It's just not an exact quote because newspapers have to truncate things for headlines.
What was the extra 3 words? Lol, get fucked.
Probably.
Just cash money, baby.
Suck my dick.
It's so good. It's just the idea is well, that we just have someone sat on a fucking throne who we can't arrest. It's really weird. Right? It is weird. There's this hero unit on the throne. We can't do anything to him.
Telling you, viva la revolution.
The French had it right, man. Just cut the heads off. Let's get that guillotine on the go. Like, you sorted everything right out. So I still think that's. I think I was doing a video for like biographics the other day. It was about like the French Revolution. And I just like casually noted, like, hey, Americans, just so you know, the wealth inequality between the richest American and poorest American is like 16 times higher than the wealth inequality between the aristocrats and the peasants during the French Revolution. Hint, hint.
I've got so much respect. They just don't take shit in France.
It's like that great tweet, isn't it, of like British people when like, you know, labour laws are getting slashed and like, you know, our privacy is being demolished, and it's like, oh well, carry on, like cheerio, tip top. And it's like the French, and it's like, we are going to like take away 1 day of sick pay, and it's like we will send grenade launchers through the windows of Parliament. It's so dumb. But thank you everyone for watching in 2018 when I wrote this. So you know the Queen died, right? Nah, she's still alive, man. We're getting Warhammer. The Emperor, he never died. The golden throne that just keeps her in like a state of undeath.
That'd bring some tourism in if you just sat a corpse on the throne.
Like Lenin. Like, do you like Lenin in his glass coffin where it's like they just preserved his body? So do you know with the Queen? Do you know the London Eye? Where it spins around. They should turn it on its side and just hang the Queen from it.
I thought you were going to say just attach it to one of the cabins. Just have it go around.
And if you're special, you get the Queen cabin.
Marionette it around.
Oh, yeah. Just like her sitting in one, and you just, if you get lucky, you get the right one.
Oh, it'd be like House of Wax where Jared Padalecki's sat there and he's alive and the jaw falls off. It'd be that, but the Queen just sat in wax.
Oh, it's great. We should do it. Oh, yeah. Abolish the monarchy. Cheers, everyone.